Giddy up and go. This is Brains Gone Bad. The baddest brains in podcasting are here to feed your Walking Dead novel addiction. I'm Kim.
And I'm Lizzie, and I'm feeling giggly and excited and exuberant because tonight, Kim, we once again are joined by Jay Bonansinga.
Hi, Jay.
Jay!
It's great to be here.
I know. I'm just so excited. I loved the last conversation, so I'm super psyched about this one. And tonight we're going to continue our journey through the Walking Dead universe, and we're going to talk about the next novel in the series of The Walking Dead, The Rise of the... Wait a minute. Yeah, it is The Rise of the Governor. The Road to Woodbury. I had my iPad on top of it. Sorry.
Now I see Jay popped his camera in, which our listeners won't be able to see. I see Cheryl next to him. Hey.
Oh my gosh, this is almost like Romper Room.
Yeah. So Cheryl.
Oh, it's Cheryl.
Yes, I see Lizzie and Jay and Cheryl.
You can't see me yet. All right.
Imagine
Mind
that.
you, you know what? I have to take my Batman sticker off my camera if I'm going to do that. And I did not do my hair or anything. So.
Me either.
Okay. So, hi, Cheryl. Hi, Jay. I'm so excited. Okay. Apparently it's not going to work. So, Jay, I meant to ask. Oh, that's okay. I'm sure Charlotte's going to bark at some point. Jay, you are authoring the books with Robert Kirkman.
That's one of my fans.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Okay. Cheryl, I'll mute you for now. I'll bring you back.
Good idea.
Okay. So he basically gives you the outline, and then you flesh it out and do all sorts of crazy things.
Yeah, so, the first 4, that was the case. There's 8 altogether. And so the first 4, he would give me an outline. And as a matter of fact, if we get to like the rise and fall of the governor, those are almost the comic adapted into prose. So the first 2 were sort of prequels to Robert's comic book timeline. Does that make sense?
It certainly does, because I was reading through, The Road to Woodbury, and I kept waiting for Rick to come into the picture, and it's kind of, because it had been a while since I read it, and then as I'm getting further along, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, no, he doesn't show up until the fall of the governor, and
very good.
We're getting to know Lily Call, which is very exciting. And is that supposed to be her, I'm assuming, running down the road, which kind of reminds me of a Rick Grimes kind of silhouette?
Yeah.
I think at the farmhouse or something like that, or he's standing on something with the Colt.
She's like the prose version of Rick Grimes. She's like the doppelganger to Rick Grimes in prose form, in the books.
Yeah. And I identify with her quite a bit, but that will change as she becomes stronger. Because generally, I cannot stand a heroine in any book. I usually hate their guts, and they annoy me. But she doesn't do that to me.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I know. I think I know where you're coming from. And I did try to model her after a woman that I know very well, namely my wife, Jill. So, some teachers will tell fiction writers, don't describe people, their clothing, don't describe their hairstyles. Let the reader create their own hero in their own imagination. And when you describe which I thought that's BS. I want a really juicy description. I want to know what the person looks like and sounds like and smells like, and I want to know what they move like. and at the time I was falling in love with my wife, and so I was like beset by her look and everything. So it might have helped Lily Call have an identity that she wouldn't normally have. The ripped jeans and the beads in her hair and the tats. Anyway.
Interesting.
To her, she was already a real person before she appeared on the page.
Yeah.
And what I see with the contrast between Lily and Rick is Rick emerges from a position of authority. He's a sheriff's deputy.
Right.
And Lily doesn't see herself at all in having any authority in this world.
Very good.
When
Very
she
good.
enters it.
Yeah.
And that's your job to develop that.
Yeah. It was the best characters in fiction, in literature in general, are those that have enormous arcs of change, like Michael Corleone. They completely change. Those are the most interesting characters in fiction. And Lily, I was going to talk about that later. Lily has an amazing arc just in this book. It was a plan of Robert Kirkman. It's one of the many innumerable things that Robert cooked up over the years that I've always admired. Like he knew exactly how he wanted Lily on page 1 versus the last page. It was that specific.
Wow.
In fact, it was like an experiment in fiction writing to have this, challenge. Here's a person on the first page, and I mean, when I say first, I mean literally page 1, who is like this, and on the last page, she's like that.
Yeah.
Get her there. That was an amazing, challenge.
That would be an awesome assignment for a writing class.
Yeah, it would, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
It would.
To really push you to figure it out.
Yeah, most people don't really, most, especially like fledgling authors, beginners, you have so much to think about. You have so much on your mind when you're writing and so many plates to balance. And you don't think that maybe it's perhaps the most important thing about storytelling is have a character who changes.
Yeah.
It would be the most important thing. I mean, tomes have been written about it. The hero's journey. There's so many things written about that aspect of fiction. I never really even thought about it too much.
Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Now,
this is so educational. I hope it's not getting boring.
No, and I'm like, now I want you to do a class. I want you to have a writing class. So Jay, when I'm reading this, I don't hear my voice. All I hear, after getting so used to your voice, I hear you reading the book to me. I can actually hear your voice.
Are you referring to my Ashley Wilkes voice, though?
No, not even that.
I used to call it my Frank Underwood voice, but I've...
Oh, God. Yeah, there's another story.
Lexicon.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I keep thinking about how much I loved Baby Driver and how I'm like, I don't think I can watch that anymore.
I know. It's so sad.
It is really sad. Like, House of Cards, come on.
I know. I have a dear friend who is the story editor on that show. She essentially lost her job because of somebody an asshole.
Yes.
But I hear they're going to come. They're going to come back.
Yes.
Everybody's coming back except for Spacey, and they're going to go through with their original plan, ironically, which was for the Robin Wright character to sort of take over.
Yes.
So anyway, it'll be good.
It worked out better.
It will be.
Now, Jay, Cheryl has a question about Lily that she'd like to ask.
Sure.
I like that Lily has a lot of anxiety, like before, that she was dealing with as a teenager. And now she really has to deal with it without any help, without her father, without a doctor. How did that work? How did that come about? That she, that in the way you played it out.
Yeah. Well, that's extremely perceptive because, as I just said a minute ago, I had to get her from point A to point Z. Dorothy Parker used to tell a joke about somebody I don't know who it was. I'm not sure who the quip was about, but it was somebody she hated, and she goes, "Yes, her personality runs the gamut from A to B." But
Yeah.
Lily had to go from A to Z, and that was one of the early touches that I brought into the table. I started to put together her backstory, and I used, like, I'm sure this is true for most, if not every author, you just use stuff from your life and stuff that you feel, and I remember when I graduated from Michigan State, the day of graduation, I was standing out in front of this duplex house I lived in with 4 other students. And I'm looking around, it's a sunny day, it's in June, and I'm graduating. And I had my first like full blown Grand Mall panic attack.
Oh God.
Because I my brain and subconscious and body were probably all going, hey, you know what? It's fun and festive right now, but now, afterward, the party's over.
You got to grow up.
You have to be an adult. You have to, and I used a lot of that for Lily, as you just, sort of astutely, pointed out. That was the first piece of the puzzle, and it ran through that into her relationships and her guilt and her, latent maybe racism, about Josh, and it was like the first piece of the puzzle to a long like stepping stone to where she got to at the end.
Yeah, how she felt guilty about him when she left him the very first time.
Right.
And he told her later, no, I was trying to tell you to run. But that guilt, she chalked that up to her anxiety that she couldn't handle it.
And then never let go of it.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, the Walking Dead is, I've always thought, and now, there's Fear the Walking Dead, which is on the West Coast and in the sea and all over the globe, but the original Walking Dead I always saw as a Southern story, like a Southern Gothic, and all the racial aspects that go along with that, all the history, all the, just, it's there. There's nothing to do about it. It's there in the original comic book. It's something Kirkman really, brilliantly, just subtly wove through it without hitting you over the head with it. Which
I totally loved. So Jay, what I was hoping is that you would actually do a little bit of reading. Any of your favorite passages or anything like that would be great. Wow, if you're
your timing is so good because I was going to read what we've been talking about, like where she is at the beginning of the story. For those who haven't had a chance to read the book, you'll see, I'll read a couple pages from the very beginning. And these were one of the few parts, like Robert, when he writes, Robert Kirkman, for the first 4 books, he would write very kind of general outlines. In fact, that's how he writes his comic book scripts. They're very conversational. He'll say, we start out, Jay, and he'll address me in the outline. He goes, we start out with Lily, and she's just completely at a loss for what to do in this new crazy world of the apocalypse. And she can barely even pound a tent stake in this, tent city that they're trying to build and secure. And that was all I needed. And then he moves on to the next part of the book. He'll go, sometimes he'll say, and then they go here and one of them is killed. I don't know how exactly. I'm sure you'll come up with something great, Jay. And then go here. He's very cool about that. That's how he talks. That's how he writes to his artists. That's how he writes his comic book scripts. And that was perfect for me. We got lucky because that's fantastic for me, because I put this 2-page section I'll read to you now together from that, maybe a 3-sentence little paragraph, very conversational, that he described. Because I'll tell you why it was super important for the entire book series and my relationship with Kirkman and the entire Lily Call, saga after I read these couple of pages, and I think it'll make sense.
Okay.
Again, I'm going to read them in my faux Southern accent, filtered through the north side of Chicago.
There you go.
Huh.
Oh my God, we're traveling.
All right. Part 1. Red Day Rising. Life hurts a lot more than death. Jim Morrison. Chapter 1. No one in the clearing hears the biters coming through the high trees. The metallic ringing noises of tent stakes going into the cold, stubborn Georgia clay drown the distant footsteps. The intruder's still a good 500 yards off in the shadows of neighboring pines. No one hears the twigs snapping under the north wind, or the telltale guttural moaning noises as faint as loons behind the treetops. No one detects the trace odors of putrid meat and black mold marinating in feces. The tang of autumn wood smoke and rotting fruit on the mid-afternoon breeze masks the smell of the walking dead. In fact, for quite a while, not a single one of the settlers in the burgeoning encampment registers any imminent danger whatsoever. Most of the survivors now busily heaving up support beams hewn from found objects such as railroad ties, telephone poles, and rusty lengths of rebar. Pathetic. Look at me, the slender young woman in the ponytail comments with an exasperated groan, crouching awkwardly by a square of paint-spattered tent canvas folded on the ground over by the northwest corner of the lot. She shivers in her bulky Georgia Tech sweatshirt, antique jewelry, and ripped jeans. Ruddy and freckled, with long, deep brown hair that dangles in tendrils wound with little delicate feathers, Lily Call is a bundle of nervous ticks, from the constant yanking of stray wisps of hair back behind her ears, to the compulsive gnawing of fingernails. Now, with her small hand, she clutches the hammer tighter and repeatedly whacks at the metal stake, grazing the head as if the thing is greased. It's okay, Lily. Now just relax, the big man says, looking on from behind her. A 2-year-old could do this. Now, stop beating yourself up. It's not me I want to beat up. She pounds some more, two-handing the hammer, and the stake goes nowhere. It's this stupid stake. You're choked up way too high on that hammer. I'm what? Move your hand more toward the end of the handle. Let the tool do the work. More pounding. The stake jumps hard off the ground, goes flying and lands 10 feet away. Damn it! Damn it! Lily hits the ground with the hammer, looks down, and exhales. Now, you're doing fine, baby girl. Just let me show you. The big man moves in next to her, kneels, and starts to gently take the hammer from her. Lily recoils, refusing to hand over the implement. Give me a second, okay? I can handle this. I can. She insists, her narrow shoulders tensing under the sweatshirt. She grabs another stake and starts again, tapping the metal crown tentatively. The ground resists as tough as cement. It's been a cold October so far, and the fallow fields south of Atlanta have hardened. Not that this is a bad thing. The tough clay is also porous and dry, for the moment at least, hence the decision to pitch camp here. Winter's coming, and this contingent has been regrouping here for over a week, settling in, recharging, rethinking their futures, if indeed they have any futures.
Ooh.
A little something like that.
Yeah. Well, as a Southerner, I declare, Mr. J, you nailed that. That's what we would call you, Mr.
Well,
J.
thank you.
Mr. J.
I'm getting the vapors. I'm so
Yeah.
excited.
Especially Josh, you really got that deep tenor in his voice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to be Josh. I thought he was one of my favorite characters. And not to spoil anything, but
Yeah.
what happens to him is kind of heartbreaking, and it killed me. I love that
Jay, I really hated you. I hated you.
Yeah.
I was like, you didn't have to do that.
No, I know.
Gosh, that was I was none too pleased, to say the least.
The interesting part about that is that was we had finished one book, and we had a little bit of a sabbatical, and then we were starting another one. And the first book had just gone through the roof. We didn't expect it to be as well received as it was, and I felt like Nirvana after Nevermind. How are we going to top it?
Yeah.
How are we going to Pink Floyd after Dark Side of the Moon? I mean, there's no way.
Yeah. That's it.
Quit.
Yeah.
But it was the exact opposite, because when Robert turned in, gave me his outline, I was like, oh, this is going to be so good. And he said, I want to begin the book in the inversion of how we end it. Like when we begin the book, she can barely pound a tent stake in. And then at the end of the book, she's literally going to, and doesn't really spoil anything, but she's literally going to be feeding body parts into like a wood chipper and gazing off, thinking about the governor and saying to herself, someday this is going to be you, shithead. And that was my assignment. That was my assignment. And that's why that opening, and it goes on for maybe 3 more pages. It's like a long sort of establishing shot of this character that's going to be, she's going to have 7 books written about her. She's going to be Anna Karenina of Walking Dead.
Yeah, Anna Karenina. Oh, I put it in. Okay. Yeah, no, like, I loved the whole thing. I loved the little bit of background we got about Josh, with his mama, and how, she called everyone honey child. And then that was her undoing, her charity to all those she saw as less fortunate, even though they were not so well off.
Yeah,
right.
Come on in, shuffling gentlemen. Come
right. Robert, didn't really give me a lot of the backstory of these characters, because he, on purpose, I think, a comic book writer is more like a filmmaker than a book writer. A comic book writer tells stories with pictures and dialogue. So he doesn't do that in his comic books. He doesn't give you a lot of backstory. I mean, anybody who's read his comics and knows who Lily Call is, strictly from the comics, knows she was in maybe 7 panels. That's it. She did something really, huge that changed the course of the entire, intellectual property in a way. But his mother was based on my grandmother, because my grandmother was just like her. And my grandmother didn't get eaten by zombies, but I probably need to, explain that. Right thinking, God, that's a shame she got eaten alive. But,
her kindness killed her. Oh my gosh. I didn't have time to go back and look, but the Cole Brothers Family Circus, the name of it reminded me of the trio that Tara and gosh, I was
Oh yeah,
the Chalmers family band or
It's
whatever.
almost
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it just kind of reminded me of that. And while I was reading it, and I meant to go back and look, but I never did. But I didn't really think it was the same thing. What I loved was that you brought a whole new meaning to circus when we see them again.
Yeah.
Like when we actually see the circus performers.
Right.
And to me, like if you are already experiencing, the zombie apocalypse, to see all the quote unquote freaks from the circus coming at you, and they're actually going to eat you.
Yeah.
That
And-
was terrifying.
And the little ones are leading the pack.
Yeah,
And it's like,
just like the little chihuahuas that are like
Yeah.
always so vicious.
yeah. Well, I highlighted that section in the book and put a note, vivid.
It was very vivid, Kim. That's exactly the word.
It could be
That's
a
so
vivid
cool.
nightmare.
That's wonderful to hear as an author, because there's a subtle aspect of writing that becomes even more important when you're writing for someone as a writer for hire in another IP. You're playing in someone else's universe, and you don't want to go out of the tone of their established, amazing, epic, story. So that I pushed that, I thought, when I was writing it. But with Robert, you just got to try it, and he'll either go yay or nay.
Yeah.
I tried a few things that he didn't like, and he just goes, no, we're not going to.
Yeah. Now, Cheryl has a comment on that scene. Cheryl.
That whole scene with those little ones, the midgets or whatever, coming toward them, and then the description of the big fat lady, and it was like the American Horror Story when they did the circus, clowns in the circus meet The Walking Dead.
That's a good point. It was very much like that.
It was just like, oh, I'll not sleep tonight with that one.
Well, I hate clowns. I really, really do. But ever since I read Stephen King's It, I have had a thing for Pennywise, like there is no tomorrow.
Really?
Years and years and years. I've always, every once in a while it would be, we all float down here, that would just come up.
You're so right. I think there's a whole generation of people probably around our age who read that book when it first came out.
Yeah.
It hit us right at the right time, at the right age, and it changed our lives in a very subtle but Stephen Kingian way. Yeah.
Enough so where I'm thinking maybe this Halloween, when people get up, or maybe either the 31st or November 1st, there might be red balloons on sewer grates, because I'm constantly taking pictures of different sewer grates and just thinking, we all float.
Yeah.
I just,
that was the most terrifying. I don't know. That was the most terrifying line of dialogue I've ever read. We all float down here.
Yeah.
I don't know why. That's why. It's
so simple.
Yeah, it's so simple. Exactly.
And it's just terrifying. So thanks for just really bringing a new definition to killer clowns.
Yeah.
That was like, because cool. Just like with the white grease paint and then the blood and the gore, like that's terrifying. So I was like, ooh, I hate clowns.
Two scenes that I've wrote over the years of working with Robert Kirkman that made him laugh and that he loved, and he mentioned more than once, and that was one.
Yeah.
He laughed and he liked that one. And then there was another scene, and I will confess, I don't even remember what book it's in. So it may be in The Road to Woodbury. I don't know, but it's a scene where one of the zombies gets stuck in a latrine at the bottom of an outhouse, and they don't kill it. They just keep shitting on it.
Oh, I don't think that
there was a line. There was a line about one of the seniors defecating on a zombie and not even knowing it, or something like that.
Yeah, that was it. Was that in Road to Woodbury? Was that in this book?
Yeah. Wait, Cheryl has a comment. Let me unmute her. Yes, Cheryl.
Yeah, it's in this book.
Okay.
How did I miss it?
I don't remember what page it's on, but I haven't got all the way through the book yet, which is amazing. But yeah, I remember reading that it was it was right before the attack where there were just the women, the old men, and the kids.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was right around that time. And then they had somebody come over actually and end up, I thought, killing it. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, oh, that's gross.
That kind of makes me think of something I've always marveled at and had so much fun with in the Walking Dead experience for me, is that Robert would say in his little outline, I think in this tent city, they found a bunch of really huge tents, like the kind that would be in a circus. They found these. And they made these huge tents for their encampment. And I just took that and went crazy with it. I said to myself, the first thing I said was, wow, that's an opportunity for a really scary scene with zombies underneath the collapsed tent.
Yeah, the lumps moving underneath the tent that was on the ground. That gave me chills.
Yeah, that was terrifying.
Thank you. And then I thought if they found these tents, it was probably in a derelict circus, or maybe a circus train that had derailed, or there was, and then I thought, what happened to the circus?
Yeah.
And that's how I came up with all the tangential scenes and everything. So,
yeah. Because in one of my serials, they come across an elephant in the road lying on its side, and it looks like it's still alive because its belly is moving. So they get out of the car to investigate, and all of a sudden this hand missing fingers comes out of the gutted belly. And then all of a sudden it's a little kid, like the leg comes out, and it's in there devouring the innards of the elephant.
Wow. But
I didn't want to explain.
You are more twisted than I'm completely impressed.
Well, thank you. But I didn't want to explain where that came from, because I wanted it to be like some random thing, one of the bizarre things that you actually see, you know? And I loved your whole circus thing, though.
Cool.
I just loved it.
Cool.
Loved it. Skipping ahead just a little bit. Sam the Butcher. Is that a Brady Bunch reference?
I thought that too.
I'm just like, they're in the same age range, and maybe you didn't like Sam. I didn't quite get Sam.
Yeah.
When he was on the Brady Bunch.
You're spot on. You got me. You got me. I'm busted.
You
busted me, and you figured out the whole thing. I mean, I thought that it would be an Easter egg for people of a certain age. No offense.
Yeah. It is what it is. Well, I mean, it was just like, later on in life when you happen to catch an episode and you see Sam the Butcher and he looks at Aren't Happy and he's hooking up with Alice, and I'm like, well, maybe there's hope for me. I don't know. But thinking like, all right, so what's Sam's background? Because this show's filming in the 70s, so maybe he's a Korean War vet, maybe he's got some trauma back there, and Alice is the best he thinks he can do. And then
I felt sorry for Alice in the Brady Bunch. I can't explain it. I was obsessed with the Brady Bunch when I was a kid.
Oh God, me too. Me too.
And
Loved it.
Yeah. And I kind of felt sorry for Alice. I loved her. I don't know if she reminded me of somebody in my life or whatever. So I think I was jealous of Sam.
You were jealous of Sam. Interesting. That's interesting. I just, the whole fight, that whole controlling thing he has, I'm wondering how he ends up in control of all the supplies and the barter system, with the work and stuff, and, how he's wanting to run Josh and Josh isn't having it.
Right.
And he does not get his satisfaction with Josh. But in the end, he gets some satisfaction with the guardsman guy, Stinson, I think his name was.
Right.
But loses in the end.
Right. Yeah.
Just out and out loses.
Yeah.
So why did you let him lose?
That's a great question. You know, without getting too like grad schooly.
Yes, that's okay.
I always got teased by Kirkman and his people when I got like too like you know, metaphorical.
Yeah.
But
Well,
to me, it was like it was always like a fascinating political question. In anarchy, you know, a chaotic apocalypse, does you know, a benevolent dictatorship work better than a democracy because of the stakes and all that could go wrong so easily? And so it's like there's no other thing that could work except martial law. And I know I'm not really answering the question. I'm going out really
yeah.
far. But the whole, you know, the way that the military ran Woodbury was like one step from a complete tyranny, you know, but it was trying to, you know, keep order and have some kind of, you know, quasi, you know, socialist democracy, you know, with bartering and everything. And I was I guess I was trying to set it up as, you know, the next, you know, nail in the coffin would lead to the governor.
Yeah.
Complete dictatorship, a complete strongman tyranny, you know. And I was always disturbed by the fact that we went to war in Iraq and removed the dictator, and it got worse.
Right.
And it's hard for Americans to like, you know, wrap their brains around the fact that sometimes, you know, you're just making things worse for people trying to intercede and remove, you know, the bad apple. It's just and all of that stuff played into the Woodbury that they wrote into, like initially, like the original Woodbury. It was like a Roman. It was like Rome as it's falling, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does. It reminds me of one of my favorite lessons that I taught when I was teaching this course called astrobiology, and you use a bunch of Legos, and there's specific instructions that you follow in trying to put the Legos together. And you find that the first time you can't get two Legos to fit together the way they want you to. The second time you get a couple, but then when it gets beyond 3 or 4, you can't do it. And they're representing like single-celled organisms. The third time you're flourishing, it's happening, and then all of a sudden it just breaks down.
Yeah.
You know, it just keeps taking, and then the fourth time, the kids all of a sudden, they just light up. They're like, oh, this is how it happens. This is how life can evolve and, you know, start landing and thriving. It's all about surviving and thriving. So when you're talking about that, that's what that makes me think, like all of our early history has gone through all these evolutions of benevolency, malignancy, like dictatorship, you know, working together and it doesn't work, you know, even in the early colonies when, you know, the aristocrats would come over and they didn't want to work, but they expected to eat as if they did. And how that doesn't work. So it to me, it's very interesting putting this stuff together, and it's an experiment on paper.
Yeah, it is true. That's really true. And I've always thought that, you know, the zombies are exciting and suspenseful, and they're gruesome and they're fun and they're entertaining and they're scary and everything. But your body doesn't realize that they're make-believe. Your emotions and your body are watching this like society falling apart and reforming and falling apart and people dying that you loved. And that's what I think, you know, that has something to do with the power of a you know, story like The Walking Dead. You can't hold on to anybody's, you know, at risk. Everybody's at risk, which is like life. And your body really doesn't know that it's make-believe. Your body is like so invested in it, you know. I had to, you know, later in my tenure, as the author at The Walking Dead, I had to, bring some of the beloved characters to their end and like have them go out,
Yeah.
have them go out, heroically or sadly or anything. And Robert didn't insist on it, but I thought there were certain moments where, this character they have to go. It's life. It's like it felt right, for a certain thing. And I wept, I cried, and I felt like it. And I'm like, that's my body and emotions. They don't know I'm making up this stuff, and I'm following a comic book and adapting something, and your body just invests in these people, and that's why some things are so sad and moving,
painful.
Yeah.
As if you are experiencing that death right there in the moment. Which it's very hard. So how much painting in class? What? I wrote down which was first, comic governor or novel governor. We know the comic governor comes first, but my next question was, how much painting could you do? Maybe I mean figuratively. I write these cryptic notes and then I go back later, but
like embellishing,
so I mean,
embellishing.
We have an idea of what the governor looks like based on the comic, and if the comic was coming first, you already had that image to work with, and you certainly animate him. When several times you talk about his long duster and the flaps, moving in the wind, and he's just very animated. So when you're talking about like Martinez, who also shows up in the comics, and and Bob, but Bob is totally different. But in the show. I don't know.
I was working with more of the comic book version of Bob. But there's also it's all like to use like a $3 word. They're all like simulacrums of each other. Even the Bob in the show was a version of the Bob in the comic book and the books. He was a different race, and he was younger, but he had a drinking problem, and he was lovable, and that's Kirkman's. I call it, his calculus. He doesn't want to be able to.
That makes so much sense about Bob in the book, because
we lost.
Oops.
Someone
got muted.
Yeah. How did she get muted? Sorry.
Okay. Oops.
Am I muted?
Yeah. Okay. Now you're unmuted.
Okay. It just from the TV show to the book to the comic. I didn't even put two and two together until you guys just said that, and I'm like, oh, and it makes sense. The little bits that you brought in, or that you had that was brought into the show, and how he played it. That was like with the governor too. It's amazing how much they can pick up, or how much can be wrote in.
Right. To
just have enough that you see that inkling.
I've talked about this with David Morrissey a lot over the years, and he always says, well, the governor was not, if you read the book, Rise of the Governor, that he was not really who you think he was. And in the comic book, you don't have that information. So he's sort of like this just over the top
shows up.
Well, what I wanted to ask about the governor and Bob is how the governor was drawn to Bob as sort of a confidant, almost a protege in a way. Because he could be manipulated.
Well, the thing that I kind of didn't understand, I understood, but I didn't understand, because Bob reminds the governor of his own father, who was an abusive drunk, and Bob isn't that way at all.
Right.
And to me, it just seemed like Kim was saying, he was manipulating him, like subjugating him, unlike the way he was able to subjugate his dad. And so finally, it was like taming that demon.
even
Yeah,
people who
yeah, that's really well said.
yeah,
That's really true, Lizzie.
people who've
I
had
couldn't agree more.
dads that they hated for whatever reason, they still wanted to be admired by them. They
Yeah,
still
yeah.
seek their approval.
Yeah, maybe that I've never even thought of that, but maybe Bob was for the governor a redo. Maybe
Yeah.
Bob was the dad that had the governor had, he would have been a more balanced person, a more a decent person, and not as hardcore as he was. Because Bob in the comic book, which is all I had to work with, like Bob, I would study these little tiny panels of this poor guy sort of just kind of collapsed in a gutter with a bottle, and I'd look at the way he was drawn by Charlie Adler, and I would extrapolate, how did he get there, how did he, and that, I mean, if you're a novelist or a filmmaker or an artist, you kind of do that all the time. You just walking down the street, you just go, what's that guy's story? What's that woman doing? I wonder what her story is. Or you see a group and you go, boy, there's a story there. And you fill it in. And this was a job, a gig that I had where I was constantly doing that, from visual representations that were very sort of minimal. You only had so many visual representations of Bob, but he was called into, even in the comic book, he was called to, Bob had to, get it together, and he had to, and he was brave, and he said, okay, I'll do this. I'll take care of this poor guy, and
he didn't let him down.
Right. Bob didn't necessarily love Philip Blake, but Bob had, even in his derelict, lowest ebb in the apocalypse, he had his humanity, and he couldn't turn his back on a person who was going to die, or was dying, or so I fell in love with Bob. Bob became almost heroic, and almost like a father figure to Lily.
Sorry, Kim.
I was going to say, you really can't talk about Bob without transitioning into Megan,
right?
Who he had he secretly loved, and then the governor gave to him.
Right.
And he didn't. He had an opportunity to take advantage of her, and he didn't.
Yeah.
It's just not who Bob is, though.
Yeah.
You end up loving Bob because, I don't know, like, you have so much pity, so much empathy for him, but every time he needs to come through for somebody, he always does.
Yeah.
Like, he manages to pull it together one way or another, and he's Johnny on the spot, just like in Afghanistan.
That's really true. I mean, it's kind of odd, but maybe not so odd, that I got the most mail, I got the most emails and messages about Bob.
Huh.
Yeah.
People just were so fascinated in him and wondered, is he in the comic, or is he in the show? And, people would ask questions about, did you make up the part about blah, 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 or was that in the comic? People were just fascinated by that guy. And
those are the characters.
Yeah.
And I like, the thing that I do like about the way they cast, the way the Kirkman draws, the way you write, is that when they go looking for the person to personify that character, they somehow see through the countenance and get the essence of that person. And that's why Lawrence Gilliam was so, is that his last name?
Seth Gilliam?
Gilliard.
Yeah. Gilliard. Yeah.
He played the actor that played Bob.
Yeah. Was Lawrence.
Yeah.
But he captures the essence of Bob.
Yeah.
And like
totally.
The goodness that's in him, the hopefulness that despite Bob's problems, which seem, I think that they originate, or maybe they're just compounded by Afghanistan, his experience.
They're compounded by it, definitely.
They were always there.
They were always there, yeah.
But, the monsters in his nightmare look like Afghanistan instead of what they really are.
Right.
But, he does such a great job of bringing that character to life. And what I like about these stories is that they tend to be very like colorblind. And they're not barriers at all to what a character can be and do. And you know, I do like, for me as a reader, I do like to have a lot fleshed out. What does this person look like? But I'm finding as a writer, I don't want to give a lot of clues. I want someone to decide what that character looks like. But every once in a while, you gotta, like, you know, like red hair holds a symbolism, and there's a reason why the hair is red, you know? And
yeah. I mean, I there's, you know, I remember when I was in school, you know, I had a kind of a witty English professor who once said, you know, all writers should read Faulkner, because William Faulkner was, and he was a Southern writer. You know, he was one of the geniuses of description. He would describe what the person is wearing and what they look like and how they hold themselves. And it was just a thing of beauty. It was so beautiful. You could see these characters in your imagination, and it gave you pleasure and everything. But then the teacher said, but you should always read Hemingway as a palate cleanser afterward.
Well, you know, there's a couple of things. Like, first off, I remember, I think it was a T.S. Eliot short story, but I can't be for certain. I think it's To Love from Esme and Love and Squalor or something like that. And it talks about two people. I think one character sees two other people having sex, but explains it in a simplified way, the way farm animals do, that you don't have to go into this great detail. And I want to say, I think was it Megan and Scott, you did the same thing with them?
Yeah.
Was that it?
I never thought of that, but you're right.
I read it in here and I was like, oh my God, it just brought me right back to that. And it's like when there's a lot going on there without having to have every single word telling you what's happening. And I do love that. I do love reading between the lines and painting pictures in my own head, but I also, conversely, love it all spelled out, you know, so there's no mistake. But when I was reading, I was also thinking about the names of the characters, and I'm not sure how much control you have over that. I mean, I know the governor, definitely you didn't, but do your character names, whether they're given to you or not, do they inform the character or?
Definitely.
Yeah.
They're huge. Names are enormously important, and not so much in a comic book, by the way. Like, you know, Robert's comic books that are, I think there's among the greatest comic books ever made, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was, you know, just beginning work on the first book, I of course I read all the comic books more than once. I read them straight through, and then I started over again to make notes and copies of stuff. But as I was doing that, I was like, I got to give these to my kids. They would love these. And sure enough, they did. I gave all the comic books to my two sons, and they were like, those are the best comics I've ever read. I'm like, I know, they just fly by because they're just the storytelling is so riveting and compelling and stuff. And whenever Robert is, you know, I've said this over and over again, but I'll say it again. He has this innate ability to know just when you think things are getting a little stale and you turn the page and something enormous.
Glenn is dead.
Exactly.
Glenn is dead.
You know, like after the whole in the comic book, after the whole Negan, you know, episodes, all the Negan, you know, agita. You know, you think, okay, it's going to settle down for a while, and you turn the page, and all of a sudden, a group of zombies whispering to each other. You know,
Yeah.
you're like what? It just never stops. You cannot
I was just going to go on vacation.
Right. Exactly.
We got through the fair and now it's time to go on vacation. No, that's not happening. Because I was just like, I remember being, I don't know if it was 10th or 11th grade, and we were reading J.D. Salinger's like something about banana fish. I forget what, it's a short story, and Seymour Glass. And I didn't think anything of it, like when you sit there in school and you rip apart a book and you're like, okay. And I'm sitting there, I swear to God, I'm like the thickest dummy in the world. And I'm like, Seymour Glass. I'm like, oh my God, Seymour Glass. Yeah. It's transparent. And then I was like, because when I wrote that question, how much do the names inform your characters? I've got Seymour Glass right under it. And
that's interesting, because first of all, Salinger is one of my early, heroes. And it's huge. I had the pleasure of giving, one of the main characters in the whole franchise, the governor, his last name. Because in comic books, rarely do characters have last names. Maybe Rick Grimes and, you really
Maggie Green.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Herschel Green.
Yeah.
There's a few, but you would be hard. The Dixon brothers are not a creation of the
right.
You would be hard pressed to come up with, other characters in the comic book, what their last name is. And even Glenn. People know Glenn's last name now because it's sort of been in the zeitgeist for so long.
Yeah.
But Philip and Brian Blake had to have a last name, and I spent a lot of effort and thought on it. Blake might not sound like that exotic a name, but I wanted a name for them that was sharp. It sounded like it could cut you. And also it has double meaning because, it also is kind of inspired by the transcendental poet, William Blake, and his kind of trippy, paintings and poetry, which have inspired, serial killers. And so I thought I was going to put, use all this stuff. That's same with Lily. Lily didn't have a name, and I thought Lily Call. I arrived at that after a lot of false starts, but Call, C-A-U-L.
Yeah.
That sounded right to me, A. And B, I thought of it because I've always been fascinated by this old wives' tale that my mom's side of my family, who are from Arkansas, they used to tell. It's like a hillbilly tale that sometimes a baby is born, it's like a breech birth, with the amniotic sac across their face. And it's an emergency birth, and you have to peel the amniotic sac away from their face. But do you know the mythology about that?
No.
They say that if a baby is born with the amniotic sac on its face, it will have second sight.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so that started to make a lot of sense for Lily, and I thought, and she's also being reborn. Throughout her story, and so anyway, I spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Well, because it's just sometimes, I'm so not comparing myself to you because there's no comparison. I mean, you're Jay. But
you're so sweet. That's so sweet. It's so not true. You're as talented a writer as anybody.
I don't know about that. There's a couple where I'm just like, why am I reading this book? But at any rate, is it like voices sometimes? Like the thinking, but then sometimes like voices come in, or you hear voices and it's not you, but it's you?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
It is like that, totally. If you ask Jill, my wife, she'd go, "Oh my God, he talks to himself constantly."
With the notes, do you write notes constantly?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I totally. I'm like going. you know, I'm washing dishes or I'm, you know, cooking or something, and I'm thinking about like ways to say stuff, and you know, I'm thinking about accents, and it's, you know, I mean, I think it's just an occupational hazard. You hear voices, you know, but I think it's not like I don't think I need medication for it. Maybe I do need some antipsychotic drugs, but but you know, I think the after you write a number of books in your life, you start to get in a really cool groove where you know how a passage is supposed to sound. It's hard to explain, but like, you know, I've had editors that want to tear apart stuff I've written and then rebuild it in a more grammatical way, and I go, you know what, can you just leave that part? Because it's like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever read any Thomas Wolfe. You know, my grandma used to be obsessed with Thomas Wolfe, and he used to write these beautiful poetic paragraphs in his stories, and you know, they were novels and stories. And like, I wish I could quote some of them. There's one in a book called You Can't Go Home Again, where he's like, the dead and buried men return, the dead and buried always return, the dead and buried men, like plants, will grow up through the earth and return, and blossoms in springtime. Like, that's a paragraph and You Can't Go Home Again. And it's so beautiful. And like music, you start to hear this thing,
cadence.
The imagination, the cadence, the rhythm. Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. Oh, crap. Ugh. I was just going to say something. Like, I just get very excited about all of this. But
well, that's why you're good at what you do.
So I noticed with some of the words, like you're saying zombies, like I actually am seeing zombie in here along with Walker. So is that permission? Is that you? How does that come about?
That slipped through. That's like that's, I guess, what you would call an anachronism. It's not supposed to be there, because after, I think what happened was Robert has this amazing staff at Skybound that really, you know, they're on the beam with every comic, and there's a comic coming out every, you know, 3 weeks. There's a comic coming, you know, and his editors have been amazing over the years, and they I was, you know, lucky enough to have them do the first edit on the books, and then I would go to Brendan Deneen, who was the editor at Thomas Dunn Books, and you know, he sort of did the final edit. So I had 2 really talented editors, but in those early days, we were still inventing what the books would be, and I take blame for it. I just, you know, threw zombie in there just because I'm just on a roll, and they slip through, because if you really, nobody would ever waste the time doing this, but if you really unpacked all the books and looked at them, you would see that after this one, maybe after the first half of the next one, zombie is never used. And it's not supposed to be used. I asked Robert all kinds of questions like that. I asked him one time, do the people in the story know about Night of the Living Dead? Does it exist in the world of the story? Do zombie, you know, because I've seen authors and filmmakers kind of play with that. Either have the characters not know about it, or have the characters know about it, you know? And Robert said, not really. I mean, yeah, technically it takes place in the real world, but you know, I mean, I could go on forever about how Robert Kirkman and again his staff, the people, his closest confidants and the closest creative people he works with, they all, after a while, just absorbed his universe, and they know what plays and what does not play. And some of it is maybe just taste. Maybe it's just Robert's taste, you know? But you do get a sense for what plays and what doesn't play. I went through this whole thing with the executive producer of the show, who I love, and he's a brilliant guy named David Alpert, and he was Robert's sort of right-hand person during the writing of all these books, and so I would talk to him a lot about him. And like, I was like, do you ever think about the fact that maybe a dead body walking around outside would fall apart after a few weeks, a couple weeks, and it would just disintegrate?
Yeah.
Really a dead body, and it had no regenerative, and after a while he explained, there's every intellectual property has its own rules, its own, norms and mores that are set up by the originator. And in The Walking Dead, you don't apply massive amounts of science to it, because it'll start to fall apart. It's more fantasy than science fiction. It's more metaphorical fantasy than science fiction, and I got that. That was all I needed. I'm like, okay, I get it totally.
Yeah.
Cool. That's
cool. You do have to suspend your belief system in everything that you learned, if you learned anything in science class. But that was one of my questions, like, after, we're in book 2, are there a set of rules? Do you have a poster behind you with all the zombie rules that you have to keep going back to, zombie physics per se?
Well, not exactly that. I will show you something, though. You might find. Hold on. It's right here. You might find this interesting. I did this. Hold on, I'll show it to you. I did this. I don't know if you'll be able to see it but I did this while I was working on the first Fall book. So this was after I wrote The Road to Woodbury. I was like, I'm exhausted. There are so many characters, and they have so many relationships with each other, and they have so many timelines. So this is just a little teeny bit of it. Look at all this.
Gosh.
Oh, yes.
That's just a little teeny bit. I have page after page of this.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And that's what I want to do with the with Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones is like that.
Exactly,
you need something like that.
It's like a flow chart.
Yeah.
But you do, over the years, because I still marvel at the fact that I worked with Robert so closely for 8 years. Like, after about 5 years of it, he was so generous to me on so many levels. He started telling all the game companies that were making like Walking Dead games, like Telltale, and there was one Walking Dead mobile game called Road to Survival that was in production about 4 years into the books. And he goes, why don't you guys just have Jay sit in with the writers in the writer's room and just sort of make sure that you're not doing stuff that goes against the kind of rules of the universe. Because he said at one point, and this is like probably the biggest compliment I've ever been paid, because Kirkman doesn't give out compliments, but he goes, if you have Jay in there, it's like having me in the room. And I think what he really meant was, Jay's been working on these things so long, and he's asked me so many stupid questions. Like one time I said, you know what, Robert, I was early in our relationship, because I'm like, we should have a chapter from a zombie's point of view.
Oh my God. And he said,
yeah, no.
Good idea. Let's put that on ice.
Yeah. I remember one of the British publishers is like, in the and I think this is in Rise, but it might be in Road to Woodbury. There was a scene where they come upon it. No, it was in Rise of the Governor. They come upon a church, and all these parishioners got locked in the church, and they all turned.
Yeah.
So they were in there for months. It was kind of a scary scene, because then they start pouring out of this church, and all these, people in their Sunday best that are all moldering and everything. And it was a great scene to write. And I finished it, and Robert approved it. And then we got this note from the British publisher. excuse me, but if all these zombies were locked in this church together, wouldn't they eat each other? And I swear to you, I'm so insecure. I was like, oh my God, did I drop the ball here? Did I mess up? Oh my God. And I thought about this for days, and I typed an answer that was sort of like, that's a great question, and I may have to defer this to Robert, and finally the editor of the American editor sent it on to Robert. He just forwarded it to Robert, and we got this reply from Robert Kirkman like 5 days later, and it just said, zombies don't eat each other.
Yeah.
Next question.
Oh my God. That's exactly how I would feel, like as if I screwed up a whole book, and I'm like, and I've got to go back
like,
and
would they eat each other?
Oh my God. I'm fired. I'll be looking for a new job tomorrow.
Right.
Where's my interview suit? Oh my God. I totally understand that. Like all of a sudden, like panic. Oh man. It was interesting. You caught me off guard, and it was as if you were reading my mind, and you right in pace with me.
How do you know I wasn't reading your mind?
Because you had already written it. And I hate doing this. So on page 145, Brian becomes Philip out loud. And I had to go back and think about it.
Uh-huh.
Who was in the closet? Was it Brian or Philip? At the beginning of the first book. And I'm like, oh, it was Brian. But Brian, now I got to go back and find it. But on page 145, am I on page 145? Bob watches from the door. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he goes back and forth, and somehow that's when I started going back with, do your names inform the characters? But on page 218, he's talking about it's New Year's Eve, or he's pretending or just assuming it's New Year's Eve. And he's spending it with Penny, and he's got all these succulent delicacies for Penny. And they're celebrating, and he's got champagne, and he talks about having a pig roast with all his friends. And I'm like, wait a minute. He doesn't know who he is. Like, is that Philip or is that Brian? Brian didn't have any friends. Oh my God.
I remember that.
And it
I
starts
writing that.
Yeah. And it's spinning in my head, and I'm trying to read, and my head is spinning because he doesn't know who he is. And you start laying that out. He doesn't know who he is anymore.
Right. It was really hard to write. It was really hard to even figure out the form of it, because, do you call him the governor? Do you call him Philip? Do you call him Brian? Philip, there's one point where he starts to get confused himself. Like, am I Brian? Am I Philip? Am I the governor?
Yeah.
Wait, I'm neither of those guys. He needs to. This is uncharted territory. I've never read anything like this. I've read the original Robert Bloch novel called Psycho. Which I kind of used a little bit, or I just learned how to write a multiple personality. I'm not even sure technically, pathologically, the governor is a multiple personality. It's uncharted territory what he is really, because of this twin, because of this dual nature, this weird psychotic break that happens.
And I think a lot of people would be going through this given the nature of what's going on around them. Lily can't do anything. She can't hammer in a tent stake. And at the end, she's leading a resurrection, not what is the right word? A coup, a revolution against the governor, and it's very interesting, because if you have to dress yourself up every day to be this character, you might forget who you really are on the inside. And that's, you know, because he talks about his wife Sarah dying in a car accident, and he's got, you know, Penny's an only child, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not his kid. You know, I got lost. I was like,
right.
Oh
Well,
God,
I think,
who is he?
Yeah, good. I mean, that actually, I'm happy to hear that, because I think Robert and I both agreed that however we do it, and there's no right or wrong way to do it technically on paper, but we just, the key is just making sure the reader knows that he's not just play acting. He's not just, it's not a scam. Like he really does, he is in some kind of, psychopathology of not knowing who he is. Like he goes in and out of thinking that he's Philip, but he just wanted to. I think we just wanted to make it clear that he wasn't consciously doing this. And when all the doors were closed and the shades were pulled down, he's like, I'm really pulling this off. I mean, they have no idea who I am. That's fantastic. He was really, there pathologically.
There's a saying that if someone is playing a role, eventually they'll forget their lines. So if you're trying to be someone else, that eventually that's going to crack and show through.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he could never. Yeah. I mean, that's, we had so much when we had that twist at the end of the first book. It was totally controversial, as I've told you before, I'm sure. But the publisher didn't think it would fly, and it seemed too like M. Night Shyamalan meets Rod Serling. It's just, but it is one of the it's one of the fan favorites about the books. It's one of the most beloved parts of the books. That twist,
it is,
and I think it helped David Morrissey create the character. Like he's like, oh, okay, I get this guy. He's a he's an imposter. He's somebody else, and he's convinced he's this guy. It's really fascinating,
Yeah, because watching the TV show and trying to map Brian onto Philip, on the screen, it was kind of difficult. And I David Morrissey was wonderful, but I'm like, you're not doing it right. Because I'm like, hello, this is the Bible here. You're not following it. But, at the end, when it comes in and he's got the fish tanks, and I'm like, all right, would Philip do that? Or is that Brian trying to talk himself into being Philip?
Right.
So it was kind of interesting that way.
It's possible that, I thought over the years, because I've thought about this so much, it's possible that Brian was a more, off the scale, brutal, savage version of Philip.
Yeah.
Because, you know what I mean? It's like, Brian was the, educated kind of boho version of Philip. And when he lost his mind, literally he lost his mind, he started dreaming up this crazy thing, because you make a really good point. Philip Blake didn't dream up the aquariums. Brian Blake did.
Yeah.
And it works to me. For me, it works. I think it worked for David Morrissey too. He got it, but like David Morrissey was, sort of this kind of third kind of avatar of Philip and Brian. It was more like, I'm a family man.
Yeah.
I'm a family man, I'm a white collar worker from the suburbs of Atlanta. And I couldn't see the David Morrissey version of Philip Blake, managing a record store like, some, hipster, but he was neither Brian nor Philip, which I thought was fascinating and worked really well.
Yeah. Because I almost didn't, with the show, sometimes you see cells from the comic come alive. But,
which is exciting.
The whole, when Carl gets shot in the eye, the whole meat poncho thing, like that had to go off like it did in the comic.
But
I just didn't think that if we had a guy roll up that looked like the governor in the comic, that it would be as believable. Like, we needed to be sucked in. We needed to have Andrea sucked in by him. And if he looked like that, he wasn't going to be. Because what woman really is going to go after him unless she wants something? You know, like Megan does, you know?
Right. Yeah. Really good point. I mean, that's another thing that, you know, you don't bargain for when you're adapting stuff to the visual mediums is that, you know, you can,
sorry, I saw
What?
Where is the cat?
Yeah, I heard the meowing.
Oh my God, it's beautiful. Who is that?
That's Frida.
I love her.
So is that the room? Do you write in this room?
Yeah, this is my writing room.
Does she come in and interrupt?
Yeah.
Does she like step on your keyboard?
She does. Yeah, like she's supposed to. That's her job. All cats. They have their
exactly.
job to do.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
Right now she's hungry because it's around feeding time. So she's like, excuse me, your podcast is fabulous, but how about something for the effort?
Yeah, don't forget who's number one.
Yeah, well, we have pretty much used up your time. I mean, time flies when we're having fun, right?
Yeah.
I know. Oh my gosh. I know. I wish we could do this for 5 hours.
I know. I think we could. I think we could.
I mean, it's just, you know, what is it? 275 pages nope, more than that. Yeah. And we need more time. But
well, thank you. I mean, that's like, I mean, you know, when you just first approached me with this idea of having podcasts and stuff and going through the series and everything, it was beautiful. It was a lovely, like, little sort of toast to you know, the, like, I'm jumping around, but I just recently heard George Harrison's "All Things Must Pass," which is this. I don't know if you've ever heard that song, but it's a beautiful song. All Things Must Pass. And I never really understood the song because it's an upbeat song, and it's kind of a sad tribute to, you know, loss and change and stuff, which is really hard for people. But I think I finally get that song after working on The Walking Dead, because it's like, this is such an enormous cultural phenomenon that not a single, even Robert would admit, you know, not one single person, you know, is responsible for it. It's thousands, casts of thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people are responsible for it. The fans, you know, and so it was really cool to think, oh my God, what a great, you know, a gift to me to go through these books like this. It really, I can't thank you enough. This is such a lovely gesture, you know, to go through these books. And, you know, I know that you're a writer and you're also a fan of writing, and I can't, you know, you two are the perfect people to do this. It's just, I really thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's our pleasure.
Just so grateful that you're on board with this.
Yeah.
Of course.
So you want to tell us what's next in the series that we want to, you know, get everybody to read so we can talk about it?
Yes. Let me pull up the rundown. The next book is The Fall of the Governor.
These are brutal. It's a brutal book. It's really,
it is.
I mean, you know, when families come by at a Walker Stalker convention and they buy one, I'm like, you know, I mean, like one time, you know, like a little 11-year-old kid bought one, and I'm like, is that your mother? Oh, and dude, that is like a really rough book. I don't have a problem with him buying it. And she's like, oh, he's read all the other ones.
Yeah, it's not like all the other ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
you know what, Jay? after teaching, I've learned from the kids, and I'm like, oh my God, I never thought of doing that. Why do they know? Middle schoolers are just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
So
well, a lot of people get excited when they read the next book in the series, which is Fall of the Governor Part 1, because it's really where all the signature characters start coming into the timeline of the novels.
Right.
You know, so then people are reading novels are like, oh, I see how all this fits in. It all locks into some kind of timeline.
Yeah.
Lego. It's like a Lego piece of timeline, and it all fits together.
Yeah, which is good. Like, you don't want to read a companion series without it connecting somehow, so that you can fit them together. Yeah. So I noticed you posted something about going to the Walker Stalker, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. So that's not till next year, right?
No, that's in December.
Oh my God, that is, oh wow. Because I know both Kim and I will see you in Atlanta.
In Atlanta, good.
Is that your next one coming up?
Yes, that's the next one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, yeah. Oh gosh, I'm so excited to see you again. Last year was phenomenal when we did the live comic reading.
Yeah, that was so cool.
And I was hoping to pull something together for October, but I don't think it's going to happen.
It's a lot of work, isn't it?
It was a lot of work.
You really did tons of work. Yeah.
We couldn't have done it without you, though. Yeah. I think you were the linchpin. You held it all together. And you made it wonderful.
Really made the script sing, I have to say.
Oh, yeah. Literally. Yeah. So if anyone's looking for you to meet you in person, they can see you either Walker Stalker Atlanta or at North in December, which I haven't quite decided if I'm going to go. I just never can tell with my schedule. I don't know what's up. And so I will see you there.
Cool.
I'm kind of reading between the lines. Will there not be a new book in September?
Oh, no, you mean, like the normal schedule to be a new book? No, they're it's the whole empire is kind of in flux right now.
Right.
So they David and Robert want to do more books, but it's going to be a while because there's so many moving parts right now.
And changing parts.
I mean, there's stuff that I see, like in the next season of the show with the new showrunner and everything.
Yeah.
They're dropping time in literature and, like in filmmaking, dropping time just means, it's a, now we're 5 years in the future.
Right. Yeah. It's like magic.
Yeah, and that's a great idea because, I kind of did that in the novels. I made sure that each novel dropped a year so that they would make sense in the timeline of the readers of the novel.
Right.
They would go, okay, this is a year later. And after a while, they had no fuel. They had no cars that worked. They had, they could barely get the train to work on coal and stuff. And it started to get more like, almost like the Wild West.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're doing that in the show. I saw this great still that you probably saw too in Entertainment Weekly where they have like a shell of a car that they cut in half and then attached it to a buggy type assembly to horses and stuff. And I'm like,
which you did in the second to the last book.
Thank you.
Which I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think of that.
You're such a good reader.
I was just like, why wouldn't you? Because when it gets like that, you have to start repurposing things. Right. You have to look at something and think of how many different uses you can have for something. Right. And because of our lifestyle, we don't have to do that. If I want that, I'm just going to go out and buy something that does that instead of taking this Pepsi bottle and making it do it for me.
Right.
Is leading to our demise. Sadly. Okay. So my thing, well, to my joy, that probably means that you're writing something of your own.
Well, actually, I'm working on a new collaborative series with two other people in LA that it's going to be announced really soon that I'm super excited about. I love doing this kind of stuff. I love working on, you know, I love working on like existing properties and material and moving it from the screen or from some other medium into books. I don't know why. I'm starting.
I totally get that.
I'm starting to get known for this.
Yes, but you're so good at it. And
thank you.
I totally get it. Like, I like taking something that's already there and then just doing something with it.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a lot easier to reimagine or what, I don't know what it is.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah,
but you'll hear about this like really soon. I'm excited. I'm so excited about it.
I can't wait.
Yeah. So
I'm sure that we'll be talking about it then when we're doing the Fall of the Governor Part 1.
Cool.
Like in a month and a half, you think, maybe?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. All right, great.
I'm in.
All right, great. We could talk a little bit about that. I'm so excited. I don't know. I guess you guys can bolt if you want, because Kim and I just have our closing stuff. Or you can hang out and we'll just go through our announcements and we're out.
I'm gonna go feed Frida.
Yeah, I think Frida would like
that.
I'm
like boofing my leg.
Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
I love this, and it really
was awesome.
good to me. Thank you so much.
All right, we'll let you know when we're ready.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
You're what we call in Chicago a super fan.
Really?
My family says that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah.
Take
a little
care.
nutty.
Alrighty.
You too. Bye, Jay. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye, Mr. J.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Well,
Thank
Cheryl, you can hang out while we finish up if you'd like.
I've got some things to do, but I enjoyed this. I'm gonna read the other books, and I'm gonna probably have a lot more questions next time.
All right, that's
Fantastic.
fine. Totally. And draft day is next Tuesday, so you need to start putting your team together.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yeah.
I've got most of it together already. I've got a little investigating to do.
All right, great.
All right.
Yeah, because that's number 2 on our list of announcements.
Yes.
So good night, Cheryl. Thanks so much for coming by.
Cheryl.
Thanks. And I'll listen to your podcast as soon as it comes out. I can't wait for it all to start again.
Me too.
Great.
Me too.
All right.
Bye, Cheryl. And which points out that John's kids never got in line tonight, so he didn't join us. Bad Thunderthunk kids. All right.
Yeah, well, it turns out his wife had an exercise class and he didn't know, so.
Oh, okay, so the kids weren't bad. He just had to take care of the kids.
Yeah.
All right, so next week we'll be having our draft day for Fear the Walking Dead, so that will be August 7th, Tuesday, August 7th at 9 p.m. You will be able to declare your team August 7th at 10:30 p.m. all Eastern Standard Time. So announcement number 3, the compilation digest of the first 5 issues are available in print and Kindle. Print has 2 collector covers, but really there's only one you want to look at. These are all on Amazon and can be read for free if you belong to Kindle Unlimited. Issue 6 is out, Truly There Is No Comfort, and I am working on issue 7 right now.
And this is your zombie series.
Yeah, this is my zombie serial.
Yeah.
I will be at Walker Stalker Orlando, which is coming up not this weekend, but the weekend after. And you can come see me at the Bark Nerdy to Meet Artist booth. I will have my digest available. You can buy that. or you can buy an autographed copy of the first 2 books that we've done, which are The Walking Dead, The Governor. Wait a minute. Is it called The Governor? Now I can't even remember. The Rise of the Governor?
Rise of the Governor.
Oh my God, I should know this.
Woodbury.
Yeah, and I will have some autographed copies of Road to Woodbury that you can purchase at Walker Stalker Orlando. If you are looking for us, you can find us at Brains Gone Bad on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can email us at brainsgonebad@gmail.com. Thanks to everyone that downloads and listens and comments and emails and reads and talks. Oh my God, Kim. Oh no, I never did the question for I talk gibberish and I had it pulled up. Oh my God, please forgive me. Oh no.
Man.
Oh, I suck, Kim. I'm so sorry.
Just send it to him and have him answer it and send it to her. And
okay, that's what I'll do.
Yeah.
Send
it to Mr. J.
Mr. J. I'm so sorry. I talk gibberish because my brain is all gibberish.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm going to leave us. Kim, you should say goodbye because I'm leaving us with some parting dialogue.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll use my regular
Miss
voice
Kim.
instead of my southern voice.
Miss Kim.
Yeah. Well, Miss Lizzie and Mr. and Ms. Brainiacs out there, thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for joining us. Okay. Soon, when you're not needed, this will be you. She brings down the axe again and again.
Boom.